What is up, wrestling fans, and welcome to the next edition of 2001 A Wrestling Odyssey, August edition. And joining me, as always, on this journey back in time is Robert DeFelice.
Wow, Callum, here we are 8 months in. How you feeling? How you liking this trip back in time?
It's getting a little bit boring now that it's only WWF.
Yeah, it is.
It started off so exciting with WCW dying and ECW dying and all this other crazy stuff that was taking place. Now the Alliance has started, which is fine, but it's still all very WWF.
Yeah.
But that's just the way that, this is the year that wrestling changes forever, so we have to go through the lull after the massive explosion that took place earlier on in our journey. But we're still going to bring you back all of the news and events that took place in August 2001. Fair to say, probably not the most exciting month of our calendar, but I hope you stick around and listen to it anyway.
I think it's definitely on the nose to say that.
Yeah. But I wanted to start off this edition because there's going to be a lot of WWF-related news to go back through on our Reheated Tags with something not so much completely outside of WWF, but in this period of time, probably the most, I guess, collaborative independent show which took place on an annual basis, which is the Brian Pillman Memorial Show.
Yeah, these are always good sources for like wrestling matches that you wouldn't see on TV that were typically very good. You know, you'd see guys like Benoit fight William Regal. I know there's a triple threat tag in this year's Brian Pillman Memorial. These were typically good shows.
Yeah, so if you're not familiar with what the Brian Pillman Memorial Show is, it was a massive independent show which took place in order to fund the education of Brian Pillman's children after he passed away in 1997.
That's a really good gesture, and I know, sadly, I think his daughter Lexi has since passed away, but we know that his son, Brian Pillman Jr., is doing great things in the world of wrestling for himself now.
Absolutely. So there were 4 shows in total, ran from 98 to 2001, so this is the very last Brian Pillman Memorial Show. It's the biggest one, 17 matches on this card.
Wow.
I think WrestleMania had it big.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's a modern-day WrestleMania card.
I wanted to start with this just because, first of all, we're going to be getting into a lot of WWE minutiae, as I said, so it's nice to start with something a little bit different, but also because there are a lot of names on this show, some that would go on to be big stars, some that would just go on to be like bit part players during the 2000s, some returning legends, and some people that just didn't make it anywhere at all. So I wanted to just kind of run down the card, get your thoughts on all of the little bits and pieces, and then we'll move on to the other big news stories of the week. I tried to find this online in order to maybe do a review of it, but as far as I'm aware, there's no footage from this show online.
It appears the only 2 that are available are the 2000 edition and the 98 edition.
Yeah, so if you want to check those out, especially the 2001 for the Benoit against Steve Regal match at the time.
That's a great match.
Most people were in agreement with the idea that that was the match that got William Regal rehired by WWE.
Yeah, I think they went so far as to put that on the Benoit DVD that they did in 2004 because it's such a great example of why those 2 were some of the best in the field.
All right, so let's break this down match by match. We're not going to, obviously, haven't seen the matches, we can't do a review of them, but we can just talk about the people involved in it. And the first one was a match between a very young at the time, Nigel McGuinness, against a wrestler known as The Machine, but who would be better known later on as Doug Basham.
Really?
Yes.
Now, I'm looking at the card myself. I can see Danny's on the show, but I didn't know Doug Basham went by The Machine, and this is super cool for Nigel McGuinness. I actually think that this match was featured on the 2020 special.
Yeah, it potentially was. I mean, I've heard stories from like certain like people that were in the know and were following independent wrestling at the time that Nigel McGuinness is one of those people who started off really, really, really bad, and then by the mid 2000s was somehow had become one of the best wrestlers in the world, just by, as I think as Nigel says as well, his own like hard work and perseverance and not willing to give up on his dream of becoming a great wrestler.
You know what, though? I think that's okay. I like stories like that. Instead of hearing about, the Randy Ortons who are, oh, the minute they stepped into a ring, we knew that they were going to be something. I like hearing, oh, wow, they sucked. And they really worked at it and honed their craft.
So the match following that was the tag team of Rob Conway.
Know him?
Yeah, the former NWA champion. People don't know, as well as a WWE tag team champion.
The Iron Man, I believe he likes to call himself.
Yeah, off the Con Man as well.
Yeah,
his
theme song. His theme song is one of the so bad it's good theme songs in the history of WWE.
Yeah. So he teamed up with Ron Waterman, who was a semi-active wrestler, more a MMA fighter.
He did some Japan stuff, didn't he?
I believe so. This was at a point in time where New Japan was very much in the market for MMA fighters, and a lot of other Japanese promotions like Rising as well.
And I know I've also seen a dark match in which Waterman teams with Lesnar to go against Rico and Randy Orton. That's something.
Well, they were teaming up against another OVW tag team known as the Disciples of Sin.
I know who Sin is, and I think I know who Damien is.
So Sin, if you're not familiar, is Jim Cornette's girlfriend, I believe.
His wife.
Oh, his wife now.
Stacy.
Yeah. So she was the manager, Sin, and her tag team were her Disciples, who were essentially a very low rent, if you could believe it, a low rent Ascension, which is about as low rent as you can get of anything, really. So, but I don't think they never got promoted onto the main roster, as far as I'm aware.
Is Damien not Wolfie D / from TNA?
You would know better than I would in that regard. Potentially, I know that obviously I never made it onto the WWE main roster, but if they managed to explore other avenues, then good on them.
Are you surprised that they never made it onto the main roster, specifically Sin?
I know that Jim Cornette still had some leeway, but he was pretty much out of power in WWE by around about the mid 2000s, still running OVW inside like that. So
I am wrong. Damien is not Slash. Damien is a guy named Brian Logan, and I don't recognize him from anything.
Well, he doesn't have a Wikipedia page, so he means nothing to me. So move on to and somebody else that didn't have a Wikipedia page, J.R. Ryder, who I've tried to have a look for, but I can't find anything about him, and who had a match with Richard Pound.
I tried to look up Richard Pound, couldn't find much of anything relevant.
As far as I can tell from my base level research, he was pretty much exclusively, all his work was done in Stampede Wrestling, so he didn't really extend too much further. I just find it hilarious that if you just have abbreviate his name, it's Dick Pound.
Yeah, that's why the name makes me laugh.
Then we had Chad Collier, who wrestled briefly for TNA, I believe, and so I think that's pretty much it. He wrestled in the X Division for TNA for a couple of years against Donovan Morgan, who again I really can't find anything else about. Apparently he's best known as Donovan Morgan, and that's a name that I'm completely unfamiliar with.
Yeah, I know Chad Collier was familiar to me, but I couldn't pick him out of the lineup.
The next one's a little more. Well, the next match is a little more interesting.
Very good.
So Cody Hawk, who is again a bit of a nobody, but was teaming with Lance Cade, who now the deceased Lance Cade, unfortunately, a graduate from Shawn Michaels training school, wrestled in WWE, former World Tag Team Champion.
And I think it's better known that Cody Hawk is the trainer of one Jon Moxley.
Oh, that's good to hear. And they defeated the Island Boys, Ekmo and Chemo, who you'd later know as Umaga and Rosie.
Did this match only last 3 minutes, is the question I have.
Unfortunately, I don't give timings for the matches on the Brian Pillman show, so we'll never know. But if it lasted any longer than that, then they weren't living the gimmick as they should.
Damn it.
Next match, a very young Randy Orton defeating Flash Flanagan, who is a name that I recognise but don't really know anything about.
Flash Flanagan is very much a name I recognize as well, and it might just be from listening to a lot of the OVW retrospectives that Jim Cornette provides. But the name seems like I should know more about him, but upon looking at him here, I don't know him at all.
So there's a match between the Demaja and Hardcore, which the Demaja is Danny Basham.
Yeah, that's about what I know here. How's that? Is that not the most creative wrestler name ever? I'm gonna call myself the Damage Joe, but I'm gonna spell it like this because I'm edgy. Like, that's the most creative wrestler name I've ever heard.
Yeah. They defeated a team called the A Squad, who were Chet Jablonski and Dean Jablonski, who I know absolutely nothing about. They, again, no Wikipedia page, no memory, out of sight, out of mind, essentially, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, what is all that?
We have another team of supposed well, that was a team of at least potentially supposed brothers, but we have a team of real brothers, Charlie Huss and Russ Huss. Russ Huss, that's such a terrible name.
Unfortunately, I don't think... Did he pass away? There's gotta be... He never made it to WWE, and I think that's why.
Yeah, he passed away in December of that month.
Oof.
December of that year, December 2001.
Really, he had a heart attack in September.
Age 27.
Wow, and then later on that year he died of heart failure. He must have had some heart problems, but that's unfortunate. We know Charlie Haas would go on to do great things and be one of the more underutilized players in the wrestling game. But cool match.
Yes, they had a match against Steve Bradley, who's kind of just somebody who's wandered around the North American independent circuit for the most time, and Rico Constantino, who is one of the more underrated people of the Ruthless Aggression era, I feel.
I think that Rico was, because of the gimmick and what they did with him, it seems odd, but when you go back and you look at him, he's like a freaking jack dude and was pegged to be one of the big stars. He was a little on the older side, and I think that might be why they held him back a little bit.
Yeah, I believe his age was a big factor. I think it was a case of a lot of when I've gone back and read through a lot of these observers, a lot of people talk about how good Rico was in comparison to people. You talk about that big OVW class of Brock Lesnar, John Cena, Randy Orton, and Shelton Benjamin, and people of that ilk. You'd read through the OVW reports, people would say how Rico was the best out of all of them in the ring.
That's insane.
At least at that point in time.
Yeah, you don't think of that when you think of Rico, you know?
No. Then we had a fatal four-way match for the Heartland Wrestling Alliance Cruiserweight Championship. Matt Striker, Cruiserweight at the time, defeating Chad Collier, who somehow did double duty on this show, the only guy to do double duty.
Now, this is Striker with a Y, right?
Yes.
So this is not Striker.
No, it's Matt Striker.
Teacher.
Yeah, it is the teacher.
I'm pretty sure that Striker with a Y is another guy.
No, that's no. If you go on to, potentially not. I type, you click on it on the because I'm on the Wikipedia page for the Brian Pillman Memorial Show. You click on it and it gives to Matt Striker, but then it has a really short disclaimer on top of it saying not to be confused with Matt Striker.
Well, there you go. So Striker with a Y is another dude who helped train Ambrose, I believe.
All right. Well, Chad Collier was also in this match as well. Shark Boy, who I assume was the real Shark Boy.
Yeah.
And Pepper Parks, who is
Braxton
Ali's
Sutter,
husband.
Really?
Yeah. Ali's
wow,
husband.
He's wrestling this far back, huh?
Mm. Then we had a match for the HWA Heavyweight Championship, which was Nick Dinsmore, better known in later years as Eugene, defeating Ray Steele, who I have no idea was some relation. I assume he's not a relation of George the Animal Steele, but I can't be certain about that.
It's very close to Ace Steele as well, the guy who turned CM Punk. No, upon looking at him, he is very much not.
But after that, we move on to a match which featured two legends in the game at that point. Terry Taylor, the Red Rooster, defeating Bobby Eaton.
Apparently, Ricky Steamboat's the guest referee for this match.
Yeah.
And on what planet does the Red Rooster defeat the Midnight Express's Bobby Eaton?
Well, in what planet does Ricky Steamboat not be one of the people in this match, be a referee instead?
Well, see, Ricky Steamboat was still operating under the assumption that he was done, and he felt satisfied with his career. Yeah, that's an interesting booking decision, in my opinion.
We had the NWA World Heavyweight Championship defended, but Steve Corino, the champion at the time, defeated David Flair.
The
Of
king
all
of
people.
old school versus a guy who probably owns a legitimate version of the 1980s NWA World Championship.
You'd assume so. He's a park ranger now, David Flair, I believe.
What? That's crazy.
Yeah, he at the time he was being trained in OVW after being released from WCW when that went under, and I think he only lasted into 2002 in WWF before retiring from wrestling. Then we have Mark Henry defeating Hugh Morris. Mark Henry, who at the time was working at OVW in order to become good at wrestling, and it's amazing because you read through you know how Mark Henry, Hall of Famer, former World Heavyweight Champion, Hall of Pain gimmick, World's Strongest Man, all this great stuff. You read back through some of his reports from people talking about his time in OVW and saying this guy's done. Like, this guy can't get it. He's not progressing fast enough. If he comes back to the main roster, then he's going to be one of the worst guys on it. But he had that massive contract, that massive guaranteed contract that they gave him for, I think it was 12 years they signed him for. 10 years, 12 years, something like that.
See, that's insane, because here's a guy who had been like a huge piece of the Attitude Era with the sexual chocolate stuff, and then he goes to OVW. I think he gets sent back up to the main roster, and they start doing the World's Strongest Man stuff with him.
Yeah,
he leaves again.
Yeah, they push him back up after he appears at the Arnold Classic, and he becomes, I don't know if he was the first man, but definitely one of the only men to lift up the Arnold dumbbell, which is like an incredibly heavy weight with a really short grip. So it makes it incredibly difficult to lift it up, and he's one of the few people to have lifted it up. But so they use that to build up a World's Strongest Man gimmick. He comes back in 2002 for a little while. I think he gets injured, and then he comes back in 2003 with Teddy Long.
And then he disappears for like 4 years.
Yeah, no, comes back afterwards, like taking the Undertaker out and appearing at like wrestling Kurt Angle for the World Championship and fighting Undertaker in a casket match. And he defeated Hugh Morris on this one because he couldn't catch a break. Build him up, at least in that gimmick. The only women's match on the show, Lita defeating Victoria. So this was before Victoria had debuted. Well, she debuted as a hoe for the Godfather, but she hadn't made her in-ring debut as Victoria yet. She'd have to wait until late 2002 for that to happen.
That's one of the weirdest things you could ever say. She debuted as a hoe.
Well, so did Lita.
Well, yeah.
In WWE at the very least.
God, they would go on to be two of the best. So you get a glimpse of that here, I hope.
Evan Courageous against Chris Candido. Evan Courageous his contract had been acquired by WWF in the merger with WCW, but he was let go pretty soon afterwards. And Chris Candido, the former Skip, and again another one who sadly passed away too soon.
Candido was really good. Like, I can imagine this match might be one of the best wrestled on the show, even though I think that's probably this next match coming up.
Yeah, I'd also imagine if it was one of the better matches, it'd probably be pretty much carried by Candido, because Courageous was a very good high flyer, but I don't think he really got the fundamentals down at any point.
I don't know much about Courageous, except I think that's a great way to spell that name. Again, thinking of that, like, create a wrestler thing, and 3 count.
So the next one was a tag team match with Perry Saturn and Dean Malenko defeating Raven and Just Incredible.
I want to watch this match.
Yeah, this was billed as a WWF versus ECW match. Funny enough, this is Dean Malenko's third to last match of his career.
What was his last match?
He wrestled a dark match, like a tryout match for Mystico in WWE.
No.
Yeah, that was his final ever match. So yeah, just wrestling a dark match on
against
behalf.
Sin Cara, like
the
10
original
years early?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, just I think it was before he actually signed with WWE. WWE. This was just a tryout match. I think in 2009 was his last ever match, but this was his final match. He never wrestled in officially for the WWF ever again post this match. So yeah, this was like the curtain call. Dean Malenko even cut a promo afterwards saying that this was pretty much done after this. So it was a good way for him to go out teaming with Saturn to defeat Raven and Just Incredible. It probably would have been a good match to watch.
I would love to find this match. I'm sure it's pretty good. What do you think about Just Incredible? Underrated, overrated?
Well, at the moment, I'd say if he needs all the help that he can get right now.
Yes, I would agree with that.
But I don't know. Like, I think I've seen some stuff that he did with Lance Storm and the Impact players. I thought that like he's good, but I never saw him as anything beyond a tag team guy. So when he was a former ECW champion, I thought, yeah, this is a point in time when you've got nobody. And then the main event, the Hardy Boys defeating Edge and Christian and Diamond Dallas Page and Canyon in a triple threat tag team.
One of these things is not like the other.
Yeah, I think you mentioned that. You mentioned that when we were talking about this, like off air. But the weird thing is that one of these teams at the time was the World Wrestling Federation Tag Team Champions, and it's not either of the two teams you're thinking of.
It should be the WWF teams, but no, of course it's WCW's Canyon and DDP because the Alliance.
Yeah, it's one of those questions where you ask, which one of these three teams is the World Tag Team Champions? I'll give you 3 guesses, and you'll still get it wrong. So that I mean, I'm sure it was a good match. These guys all are great wrestlers at the time, so I think it probably would have delivered quite good as a main event. It feels a bit weird that a triple threat tag team match is the main event of this show.
I would bet that it's a good match. DDP, for me, I have this weird cutoff with him where even in WCW, as soon as I see the hair go, I'm like, all right, we're in past his prime DDP. He's got a very short window of prime, but it was really good.
So that's kind of it for the Brian Pillman show. Just a nice little look into one of these final big inter-promotional independent shows that just shines a light on what the future of wrestling was holding for certain people. So move from that straight into actual big WWF news. And the first big story we're going to cover is WWF versus WWF. So even though they're fighting WCW and ECW, their big actual fight going on at this point in time was against the World Wildlife Fund. So
right, okay, WWF, okay.
Yeah, So at this point, obviously, there's a long-standing history to this, and the fact that the World Wildlife Fund was founded in 1961. So they were the ones to first use the initials WWF, because at that time, or at least from 1963 onwards, it was the WWF was the promotion until they shortened it in 1979. So they'd agreed had a limited use agreement with the World Wildlife Fund that they could use their name for certain connotations and situations, but it had to be like a limited amount essentially. But after WWF launched the WWF.com website, that was essentially seen as a breach of that agreement. And so the World Wildlife Fund took them to court.
That's such bullshit because they don't even use WWF.com. They use WWF.org.
I mean, that is true, but I think it's along the lines of I'm kind of okay with what they're doing because it's a big acronym to have at this point in time, and they did have it first, so it's like finders keepers, that sort of thing, like school ground stuff really. Essentially, they won a court case on August 9th, 2001, held in the UK, which meant that it was just holding WWF liable for using the trademark. And WWF would take them to an appeal over it, but decided by May of 2002 that they would change their branding to be WWE instead of WWF.
I guess nowadays it's for the better. I guess I've lived with it longer as WWE at this point. I'm used to it. But I remember that first year of it was the weirdest thing to not call it WWF. Essentially, part of the reason why the World Wildlife Fund decided to take this action was, it says in one of their quotes, one of their statements in the court case,
The fund was particularly concerned by criminal proceedings taken against the Federation in the US and by an article in Penthouse alleging its wrestlers and employees were involved in violence, drug free-for-alls, sexual harassment, paedophilia, and rape.
Well, I can't imagine that any of that is true.
No, again, probably for liability's sake, we have to say that we have no knowledge of a lot of those things being true.
Zero knowledge.
I think we can safely say that violence and drug free-for-alls are pretty like nailed on. I think we can pretty much legally say those things. But the other ones we might just leave well enough alone.
Yeah. But I will say, I think WWE and the term entertainment fits them better, but I do think WWF, for whatever reason, flows better.
Yeah, I think it does sound better, but WWE and the entertainment aspect does suit what their brand of entertainment is. So it's interesting delving into a little bit more. Like starting from the 1000th episode of Raw in July 2012, the WWF Scratch logo is no longer censored in any archival footage that WWE presents.
Yeah, so that was another hard part of it. Like getting those anthology DVDs, at any time anyone said WWE, everything was bleeped out or the logo would be blurred. It made it really annoying to watch certain pieces of footage.
Yeah, but now they've at least come to some sort of agreement, some sort of like just equal footing where they can still have that branded footage now that it's firmly established that they're WWE. They're no longer WWF. They have no relation to that acronym anymore. So
how did you find out? Do you remember how you found out?
Well, I started watching when they had become WWE. So I didn't start watching until around about July or August of 2002. So by that point in time, they had been called WWE.
So I recall being on the website and looking through results for past events, and I was like, that's so weird. Why did everything say whatever it was like Yokozuna pinned Hulk Hogan to become the WWE champion? I'm like, what a typo that is. And then you watch Raw and you learn that get the F out. Okay.
Well, speaking of another big change that took place that really kind of links to the Ruthless Aggression era, SmackDown had a set redesign, and it's the start of the Big Fist era for SmackDown.
The Big Fist and the Beautiful People intro is probably what I go to when I mentally think of SmackDown.
It's one of the big ones. It's the SmackDown Shut Your Mouth theme, and that is the first wrestling game I remember owning. So that was a big one as well. They decided to essentially they set up the set being redesigned by Rhino goring Chris Jericho through the original stage at some point, like in the week before, and then they came back. It's a completely new layout. Pyro goes off. You see the fist clearly coming from the top of the stage. The whole new layout, because the ramp was different. The features on the sides of the fist on the stage were pretty different as well. It was like a pretty sizable change for them, because nowadays everything kind of looks the same.
I'm dying for a sizable change when they move to Fox.
Yeah, it would be good. The Beautiful People theme was introduced with a new video package introduction, obviously performed by Marilyn Manson. Did you know?
They tried to use this once before, didn't they? In '97 with Raw.
Yeah, I was about to say that. You jumped the gun on knowing this side of thing before I could even ask you if you knew it. But yeah, they tried to use it as an intro for Raw for a few weeks before reverting back to, I can't remember what the actual music was called, but I can I can picture the music in my head.
It's Thorn in Your Eye. It's by Anthrax, essentially. It's what you think of when you think of Raw's War. It's that iconic like guitar riff, and as I say this, anyone who's listening can perfectly hear it in their heads.
Oh yeah, I don't know the names of it. Like song titles always go out of my head every now and again, but I can picture the music going through.
I actually think they probably would have been better off sticking with Beautiful People for Raw, because that's when the song was like brand new and it would have been seen as like this fresh change. But it also fits SmackDown very well.
Do you like those videos that people sometimes make on YouTube where they use like modern wrestlers and modern like camera shots and stuff like that and put it to the old Beautiful People music or other like retro themes?
I love them, and they make me sad because when you hear, like for me, when I hear Across the Nation for Raw, like that's Monday Night Raw for me, that 2002 intro, and it's the same thing here. I really wish that they would tap into that again. It's part of the reason why I like the modern day NXT usage of stuff like Slipknot, because it's a great, it's edgy. It feels like you're getting ready to fight and not like, all right, here's a pop show and we're going to be fun and entertaining. It feels like a fight.
See, when I think of the Raw themes, I always go with the I can't remember again titles just go out of my head, but the I think it was the one following the Across the Nation one.
Oh, Papa Roach with the To Be Loved.
Think so. It might have been, yeah.
The one where it looks like they're just going over buildings.
It might have been that one. It's the one that says like take the best, phone it up and let it go. That one.
It's Papa Roach, To Be Loved.
Yeah.
And that is another great intro for Monday Night Raw. For me, when I think of the decline of WWE, I think of Burn It to the Ground and Nickelback.
Yeah, that's it's always Nickelback. But I will say that this is one of my favourite SmackDown themes. But I'm a big fan of the current SmackDown theme. I like it makes it feel like SmackDown's the underdog. Like the idea that they had to fight to survive, that kind of thing. I think when I first heard it when they did the rebrand in 2016. It felt like, yeah, this is SmackDown. I
really just wish, and this is another weird modern trend, there's no intros anymore.
No, it is, yeah, it does feel like more stuff is just being taken away. It's like the WWE video games, they're taking stuff out so they can put it back in a couple of years' time and make it feel...
There's also no intros there.
Yeah.
Like, what is that? We talk about the Beautiful People entrance, the SmackDown Shut Your Mouth. Just literally has the SmackDown intro, and it's perfect.
Well, we spoke about the set now. Let's go into the actual TV that was taking place in August 2001. Not a huge amount to talk about, except lots and lots of title matches. I was talking to you about this earlier. So, essentially, on Raw and SmackDown in the entire month of August, there were 19 title matches.
That's obnoxious.
And
there's only 8 shows total.
9 technically, because there were 5 SmackDowns and 4 Raws that took place in August. But still, that's an average of 2 title matches per show, which is
bad.
I did some, because I'm sad like this. I did some counting up for how many title matches have taken place on Raw up until the latest episode. Which, if you're listening to this, we're recording on the 23rd of August, so it was the 19th of August is the last episode of Raw. There have been 24 title matches from January the 1st till that date. And there was 19 just in this month alone. Again, across Raw and SmackDown, so it's a little bit different, but you get what I mean. It's a lot of title matches to be taking place on a very short window of time.
I would argue that there's more championships now. It's part of that Attitude Era culture of, everything's a title match and you can't look away. They still very much had that on Raw and SmackDown.
So this is the month that Rock kind of cements his return after coming back in the last episode of the July edition. So he's back. He's the top babyface now on at least the one side of the coin, because he's the one who's fighting Booker T for the WCW Championship. He's concentrating on feuding with him and Shane McMahon. Where on the other side, we're building up Kurt Angle as the top babyface to take on Steve Austin for the WWF Championship.
This is a really weird portion of WWE where Austin's the main heel. On the babyface side, you've got The Rock, Chris Jericho, and Kurt Angle. And there's nobody really on the heel side to kind of match with Angle and Jericho. I think at the time they're using Booker and Rhino.
Yeah, those were the 2 big ones.
Which, God bless them for using the last WCW champion and the last ECW champion. But
They're just not on the same level.
Yeah, they're just not.
No, it was a very difficult thing. Especially, there were a lot of segments where The Rock, I think it was on an edition of SmackDown where Booker T does come out to interrupt him, and Rock does his "Who in the blue hell are you?" And I know that's The Rock's thing, and he's done that to everybody. But it would have been nice if he'd have done that and then said, "Hang on, I do know you. You're the WCW champion." And then you start to establish him a little bit. It just felt a bit of a straight up burial, but we're used to that now already in the Alliance side of things.
And I feel like this is a really bad precedent for what we see now with maybe legends going after modern guys, where it's just like, hey, your programming isn't as good as my programming. You suck. So it's part of the reason why, as a character, growing up, I never liked The Rock. He just was such a dick, you know?
Yeah, I don't think anyone would disagree with that. But so among the title matches were some significant title changes. So DDP and Kanyon became the, as we discussed, WWF World Tag Team Champions when they defeated the APA on an episode of SmackDown. And then on that same episode of SmackDown, The Undertaker and Kane defeated Chuck Palumbo and Sean O'Haire to become the WCW Tag Team Champions. So we had a WWF team with the WCW titles and a WCW team with the WWF titles. Super confusing. And it also made Kanyon a double champion because he was also the United States champion as well, which many people forget because his reign was so completely unmemorable with that title.
What's interesting about that is, wasn't he just, like, given?
Yeah, he was handing it to Booker T.
Title?
Yeah, he was handed it by Booker T so he can concentrate on the world title. Other championships that took place, we see at this point in time, this month, is the birth of the Hurricane.
Huh.
Shane Helms becomes the Hurricane, becomes a superhero, deals with all that side of things, and he wins the European Championship over Matt Hardy.
That's interesting, knowing it's those two working together.
Yeah.
Hurricane, I like the Hurricane, you know? I always thought that was a fun gimmick.
Tajiri wins his first title in WWF when he wins the Light Heavyweight Championship, which we'll obviously talk about a little. We'll talk about what happened afterwards on the SummerSlam show. We've see a few other little bits of like television that I obviously didn't watch immediately at the time, but have retrospectively remembered as big moments. August sees the infamous Mirko Mania segment in the middle of a Steve Austin Appreciation Night.
I did watch that segment live, and you know, I gotta tell you, I think everybody misses the boat on the actual funny bit, which was the Alliance singing "You Are the Wind Beneath My Wings" to Steve Austin.
Hearing Stephanie, I remember going back to listen to that and hearing Stephanie's whiny pitch. Yeah, she's so grating. I mean, she's an awesome heel, but it's so grating, and it's too much nowadays. But no, the funny thing about that one is, as per usual, Sean Stasiak running out and just hitting his head off the top of the milk truck and then being sprayed by Angle on the floor when he's spraying everyone else with milk. I know it's a cheap rip-off, but as cheap rip-offs go, that was pretty great.
It's a funny moment. It's, I get the whole milk thing now, but it always came across as weird to me that they're like, what a dork, he drinks his milk instead of beer. Like, if promoting good health habits is a bad thing.
We had another infamous promo, or I say infamous, but at the time it was seen as a really huge, great promo segment. I think it still is now, but obviously in 2019 it can be taken the wrong way, which is the in the midst of the Chris Jericho-Stephanie McMahon rivalry.
Oh God.
There's this really long but hilarious promo segment where Jericho essentially puts up on the Titletron a picture of Stephanie McMahon from a year ago and a picture of Stephanie McMahon at that time in like 2001. And let's just say a couple of things on Stephanie's body had developed in that period of time.
Yeah, I mean, she was certainly drinking her milk. Yeah,
so he essentially cuts all sorts of promos, the stuff along the lines of calling, like when she was standing with Rhino, calling her the gore and the whore. Basically saying that like they should discuss their issues together at a Hooters down the road or anything along those lines. Like constantly calling her a slut, constantly saying that she's been with everybody in the locker room, pieing her in the face, like drawing attention to her implants, everything along those lines.
He would frequently say things like, "Gosh, Stephanie, you sure are the best." They had a great rivalry as like the cool douche that everybody likes against the bratty $1 billion princess, and he basically got over by calling her filthy, dirty, disgusting, bottom-feeding trash bag hoe.
Yeah,
and I don't think you could do that today, do you?
No, you definitely couldn't do that. But I think Chris Jericho would be one of the first people to admit that, especially in WWE, Stephanie McMahon is one of the big contributions in him getting over as big as he was. Stephanie McMahon.
He does actually attribute to him getting over with Stephanie, because he says, they put him with Chyna initially in 2000, and he didn't like that pairing, but it was actually his second feud with a woman that got him over.
And also in that segment, essentially the Rock's feud with Booker T was built around the idea that Rock thought Booker T was stupid. And so we'll talk about how he couldn't do the, what is 2 + 2, Booker? Oh, I know the answer to that. It's Thomas Jefferson, sucker. And then it's...
Oh my God. I don't, like, it's funny, but it's so demeaning and childish that, again, I don't know if you could do that now. Like, I don't know if that would fly today, if Seth Rollins basically said, "Hey, Braun, you're stupid."
Yeah, it's basically along the lines of, and also during that promo as well, I think it's one of the only instances of a WWF superstar using the term motherfucker, because he calls Shane McMahon the silver spoon motherfucker, and if you hear like because there's an uncensored version of that on YouTube, you can visibly you can pick it up of him saying that word. But obviously, when they did the live broadcast, it would have been bleeped out. But
that's a shame.
I think the most recent time they used the word motherfucker was, I think Vince said it to Shane during when Shane came back, and he just said it under his breath at one point.
He legit says, "Good, because I'm going to get to watch you have one last fucking beating." And it's just like, what?
Yeah, and so there are a few good segments along those lines. There was a lot of defections to the Alliance at this point in time, so Test and Ivory both joined the Alliance at this point. Test, due to the fact that he'd been in the previous month beaten up by the APA because they assumed that he was the snitch, when it was in fact Stone Cold Steve Austin. Well, actually, I don't know if it was Stone Cold. It was either Stone Cold or Paul Heyman was the snitch, but they accused Test because Test was buddies with Shane McMahon.
I don't know. I didn't like this time period because it's basically, hey, you want to be a heel? Be in the Alliance.
Yeah, but I think the thing that annoyed me most about that is the fact that Test is completely justified in joining the Alliance, because he did get beaten up by his own team, and the team assumed he was a traitor, and he wasn't. And so, of course, he's going to turn your back on them. You turned your back on him first. So it just is a sign of like people making. I like heels that are justifiable, but that's too justifiable. It's not like, it's going too far the wrong way. And Ivory was brought in by the Alliance in order to train up the Tori Wilson and Stacy Keibler. That was the storyline essentially that she was given.
And they went absolutely nowhere with that, because I don't think I ever recall anything about Ivory in the Alliance.
No, well, towards the end of the month as well, Tori Wilson starts turning a bit more babyface because she starts a relationship with Tajiri, who's obviously on the WWF side of things. I think also...
Is it odd that out of everybody we just mentioned, that Tori is one of the only ones in the Hall of Fame?
I mean, there's a few. I assume the Hurricane will get in at some point. I mean, out of all the ones, so Booker's in the Hall of Fame, Rock will be in the Hall of Fame, Jericho will be in the Hall of Fame, Angle and Austin, DDP. There's plenty of people that will be in the Hall of Fame one day.
Yeah.
We're just waiting on the right time to put them in. So that was kind of it for TV. There wasn't anything like super special. It's pretty similar case in Tough Enough as well, because at this point the ratings for Tough Enough and the novelty of it is starting to wear a little thin on people. A lot of people obviously remember Tough Enough as being, as I say, a groundbreaking piece of reality television. But by about 4 or 5 weeks in, there's only so many different wrestling drills or things like that you can show that will keep people's interest. And Daryl was gone, and Daryl was the big villain to start with, and everyone else was considered pretty bland.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. because
I mean the contestants. They occasionally had obviously actual WWF wrestlers on who did have a lot of personality, but they were fleeting in appearances. And Maven wasn't really. He obviously had a good backstory in the fact that I think his mother at the time was dealing with cancer, so he was going back to. He had to leave the house for a little while to go check on her and come back. So he had that story behind him, but everyone else was just, just there.
yeah, it sucks that they've done so many Tough Enoughs, and I can maybe name a handful of guys throughout all of the seasons that really matter.
There was another piece of TV which is like a slight bit of interest. Are you familiar with the UPN show Manhunt?
Manhunt? No.
Originally, this was supposed to be a show that WWF planned to produce, or at least co-produce, but after the purchase of WCW, that kind of took priority, and so they never got around to doing it. But it was a show on UPN which had people being bounty hunters, and they were chasing contestants, and the contestants had to stay away from bounty hunters as long as possible to win the total cash prize. So contestants were essentially fugitives, and one of the bounty hunters is 16-time World Heavyweight Champion John Cena. One of his first roles. Yeah, in one of his first roles. He was obviously at that point in time working in OVW, but he was brought on to be one of the bounty hunters in this show. It was terrible. In reality, even though they said that it was a reality show, it was all scripted because they tried essentially a pilot where it was reality based, and they thought it was too boring. So they decided to script it instead, and it was still too boring. So it received a 1.1 rating on its first show, and then was pulled after only 6 episodes. But it's just like an interesting tidbit that was saying that John Cena's first real foray into television just ended so abruptly.
Yeah, Cena, he'd probably make a good bounty hunter. What this does remind me of, that you said WWE wanted to produce that. They wanted to bring a Steve Blackman bounty hunter show to the network. I don't know whatever happened there. But, yeah.
During this time as well, there was another WWF show debuting. Especially at this. Now we talk nowadays about burnout. At this point in time, they were still introducing more and more shows. Are you familiar with WWF Excess?
I loved that show because it was one of the first shows that ever did the From the Vault section. So I got to see a lot of bits and pieces of classic matches through WWF Excess.
Yeah, so this was originally hosted by Jonathan Coachman and Trish Stratus. Just a Saturday night show. Essentially, it was typical with the type of bottom line this week in WWE, that kind of thing. Just a talk show where they had occasional wrestlers on. They covered what happened on previous shows, showed a few clips, and then moved on. Really nothing special. I think it lasted a couple of years. Trish was eventually replaced by Terry Runnels, but very little else really changed. I think it was meant to try and recapture the fun and excitement that Livewire used to have. But
and they never really did.
No, a lot of that is put onto the fact that it was Jonathan Coachman hosting it, and he doesn't have any. At this point in time, he had very little experience in the wrestling circle, so essentially that was seen as a detriment to the show. A few other bits and pieces. They started discussions at this point in time. Jim Ross had met up with Rey Mysterio in order to discuss details, but Rey Mysterio ended up not joining WWF because his contract with WCW, his Time Warner contract, should I say, wouldn't expire until the end of 2001. And then they decided not to bring him on until the brand split happened, because they would need more wrestlers to fill out all the shows. So he ended up joining in May 2002. Actually, no, June 2002. I thought it was May, it was actually June.
I thought it was July. I know it's like right before the summer.
He signed in June, but I don't think he actually debuted until late June or July. Yeah, so won't see Mysterio on our entire 2001 journey unless he appears in one of the independent shows that we may end up reviewing.
Thank God they put the mask back on him.
Yeah, that caused a lot of controversy with the Lucha Libre powers that be.
Don't get me wrong, he's got a good looking face, but the entire marketing is the mask.
Oh yeah, that was saying that is one of the biggest idiotic points of the entire run of WCW is that Eric Bischoff thought he was more marketable without a mask. Because there are some things that Eric Bischoff, like I'd say that some things he was very much a creative genius on, and in some instances he was a complete fucking moron. But we'll see how much of that creative genius and how much of that moron side that he brings to his role in SmackDown going forward. Someone who was signed to a developmental deal in WWE though was Sharmell. Originally,
I know her.
Yeah, obviously Sharmell Huffman, Booker T's wife, was brought on it actually on a true developmental deal. She wasn't brought in to be a like backstage interview or anything like that. She was signed with the intention of training her to become a wrestler. But
was she the only Nitro girl brought in?
Well, Stacy was a Nitro girl at one point.
Was she?
Yep, that was what she was brought in. She won the Miss Nitro. I don't know if it's Miss Nitro, but a Nitro girl contest. That's how she was brought in. So she auditioned. They went through like similar to like a Diva Search type style thing, which they put all through Nitro television. And Stacy was signed as, I think she took the name Storm to be in the Nitro Girls.
God, that's so bad.
Yeah, but Sharmell obviously, I don't think she doesn't last in WWE particularly long, and she doesn't want to progress as an actual wrestler.
Sharmell, I don't think I've ever seen her get in the ring. She might have done maybe one match with Booker T, even, I think, as him defending a Nitro girl. But I don't know that I ever saw her get in the ring.
Have you never seen the match against Survivor Jenna from Victory Road 2009?
All right. Well, I meant
because
like
if you had seen it, you would never forget it.
That's the worst match that ever existed.
Yeah,
I've
if you have
seen that match.
You never forgot. Yeah, because that's pretty unforgettable. If you have seen that match, you trust me. I don't want to say watch that match to anyone who hasn't seen it.
Don't ever watch that match. It's the worst match that ever existed.
But if you like punishing yourself, you should watch that match.
Jenna Maraska versus Sharmell is bad.
Yeah, absolutely. So another thing that's more interesting for modern day is The Rock's daughter, Simone, was born in August of 2001.
Yikes, and she's already training to be a wrestler in the Performance Center.
Yeah, she's part-time training at the Performance Center. So, yeah, it's just 18, 19 years old now. Just a nice little tidbit, because The Rock, again, these amazing coincidences, The Rock got married this month.
Week.
Yeah, just this week. So, yeah, just these big milestone moments with The Rock just coincide.
2019, it's almost like the kindred spirit year for 2001.
Yeah. So, Rock, Simone's his daughter from his first marriage. I think they ended up like amicably separating in the mid 2000s before he started dating Lauren. I think his wife's name is something like that.
Lauren Hashman.
Yeah, something like that. I think they worked together on one of his earlier movies. I think there's like a 13-year age difference.
I believe they work on the game plan. I think there's maybe an 11-year gap there. And they seem happy, so props to them.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's like the big WWE stories. There's a few things outside of WWE that are kind of related, and some which aren't related at all. Let's go back to the XFL, because that's always fun to talk about, especially in the year 2019. In the year 2019, and just a few days after the XFL teams and logos were introduced. I don't know if you're going to cover this on the hot tags or not with Tony later on, so I won't go into too much detail. But how do you feel about them, just as a quick overview?
So I think the New York Guardians is a lot better than the New York New Jersey Hitmen. I think anything is better than the Orlando Rage, but I think the Houston Roughnecks could have stayed in 2001.
So essentially the news broke during this period of time that after the XFL had ended in the middle of just the early stages of 2001, the winners, the LA Extreme, had not been given their championship rings that they'd been promised post in terms of, they'd obviously been given the money that they'd been entitled to by winning the $1 Million game, but because of the XFL's premature closure, they hadn't handed out championship rings, and instead the winners would have to, like, each player would have to pay an additional $120 out of their own pocket if they wanted to get the rings made for them. Just like, yep, that's pretty much the XFL in a nutshell. Just, I think it's just a little piece of Vince McMahon's psyche that he's so keen to eradicate. And good luck to him, all power to him, to see if he can do that in 2020.
I'll say this. I think with Oliver Luck running the thing, they have a chance.
Yeah, they definitely seem to have better management behind them. And I'm, after seeing the initial like launch videos and stuff along those lines and the logos, I mean, I love the name the Battlehawks. That's like, I want every team to be called the Battlehawks. That should be standard practice, but I hope that they will be able to do something a little bit more substantial than they managed to do in 2001. A few other things. Jerry Lawler's back on the prowl. He decided that this point in time.
Wait, what?
Oh yeah, this 2001 obviously separated now from Stacey Carter in the build up towards their eventual divorce. He goes online in his quest to find a new girlfriend. So this is before Twitter, not Twitter, Tinder, and other dating platforms like that. So essentially, he just posts on I don't know if it's a forum or on his blog or something like that, but he just posts basically online looking for a new girlfriend that will like be faithful and can look after my needs and stuff along those lines, because you know you have to live the gimmick, right?
2001.
Yeah,
that might be the most 2001 thing we'll read in this entire series.
A few other bits and pieces there. World Wrestling All-Stars, which is something that I am very much keen on us reviewing when it takes place in October of 2001. So those not familiar, World Wrestling All-Stars was essentially one of these Phoenix promotions, these intended promotions that come out of the death of WCW and ECW. Vince Russo was back in the plan, or at least being like the head honcho in creatively deciding this. He was bringing in names like Jeff Jarrett and the Road Dogg and Kurt Hennig and anyone who wasn't signed with WWF for free shows in Australia. And so we will go back and have a look at I think only one of those big shows is on TV. There might be more, but there's only one that I particularly remember. And you just get to see what happens in those ones, who's involved, how good, bad, or indifferent it is. And yeah, at the very least, because it took place in Australia, and that was a country at the time that was desperate for wrestling to be like on their screens. They got good crowds and good attendances, but I don't think they were very favourably reviewed. But we'll wait and see. Essentially, at this stage, a lot of the planning work and organisation and getting people prepared to travel over to Australia to do promotional work was getting sorted. That's pretty much it, really. There's not like we'll have to wait a lot longer. But apparently, one of Vince Russo's plans for a match at World Wrestling All Stars tour was a match between Disco Inferno and a boxing kangaroo.
Boy, Jumpin' Joey, let's call him. I'm gonna call him Jumpin' Joey.
Yeah, that would. I mean, I assume it would be a boxing match because you have to like fight in the kangaroo's wheelhouse. You're in the kangaroo's home, so you need to follow his rules. So I don't know how Disco would have handled that situation. He's still wrestling now. He's mainly getting beaten up by women, but I don't know whether he prefers that to being beaten up by a kangaroo.
I think I would take the kangaroo payday.
And then we got one final piece in our favourite home of New Japan. This was again the sad times for New Japan of 2001, and in one of the worst cases of the dangers of Enochiism, New Japan's IWGP champion at the time, Kazuyuki Fujita, was booked in a shoot MMA match with a man who you might be familiar with called Mirko Krokop.
I know Mirko Krokop very well. He's had a pretty decent UFC career.
Yeah, he's a very well-known MMA fighter, considered one of the best MMA fighters of all time, and a world champion kickboxer. So essentially you're putting a guy who has some sort of really limited MMA background and is essentially by all trade a wrestler, taking on a legitimate MMA fighter in a legitimate MMA match. So guess what happens? The world champion gets knocked out in 30 seconds of the.
Why? So why wouldn't Mirko Cro Cop be IWGP World Heavyweight Champion?
Well, essentially he didn't want to be a wrestler, so they didn't put the title on the line in the situation. I know Inoki did have a tendency to force champions to surrender the championships if they lost legitimate fights. I don't think he'd gone that far at this point, but this match was. You can watch it on YouTube. I watched the whole thing because it's short anyway, so it doesn't really take too much time out of your day. But essentially what happens is it's 20 seconds of Fujita just attempting takedowns on Cro Cop. Like, keeps going for the legs. Cro Cop's just standing there, just waiting for his opportunity. And then Fujita dives in one more time. Cro Cop puts his knee up, and it just splits Fujita's face wide open. Just like, he's got this huge, gruesome, like, cut, like, by the side of his face. The referee sees it because for a little while, Fujita is just grabbing Cro Cop's legs and holding him to the ground, and so you can't really see Vegeta's face. And then, as soon as you can see it on camera, it's just gushing blood out of his face. I think he needed about 13 stitches afterwards to deal with it. And yeah, there's blood stoppage, referee called it off, and Cro Cop just absolutely destroyed their IWGP champion, making him to look out to be not really that much of a threat at all. Again, one of the dangers of making a pro wrestling champion and trying to make them a legitimate fighter.
Yeah, Inokiism is a stupid concept.
Oh, absolutely. And unfortunately for New Japan, at least for if we're still back in here in 2001, it's going to be continuing for a few more years to come. So long live the days of Kazuchika Okada and Gedo as Booker. I'm much happier now than I probably would have been back then. So that's it for the news. Again, a little bit lapse on the news this week, but that means we can maybe spend a little bit more time talking about our big event review for this month, which is the biggest party of the summer, SummerSlam 2001.
The beginning of WWE's long-running love affair with the Drowning Pool song Bodies, or as most people would just know it, Let the Bodies Hit the Floor.
Oh, absolutely.
Or Let the Boobies Hit the Floor.
Ah, yeah, if Jericho has his one with us, definitely. But yeah, so SummerSlam 2001, it's one of, like, I think it has a bit of an issue with the fact of it's a show that takes place in between two of the best SummerSlams of all time. So
Yeah.
it doesn't have the prestige associated with it that the other two, because SummerSlam 2000 main evented by The Rock against Triple H against Kurt Angle in the middle of that heated Triple H Kurt Angle rivalry over Stephanie.
God, Stephanie is causing a lot of trouble these
Yeah,
back in this era.
Yeah, she definitely does. So I'm glad that she stopped doing it over the years. So, she really knew when to rein it in. That's something so that's definitely, man. Took place at the, check my notes here, the Compaq Center in San Jose, California, August 19th, 2001. 15,293 in announced attendance. The tagline for this show was just simply finally, because this was The Rock's return to pay-per-view.
The Rock. Yeah. And I'm sure they were thinking, finally, these numbers are going to go up.
Well, in terms of the buy rate numbers, they did not go up, unfortunately. But it was only slight. It was 2000 had 570,000 buys, 2001 had 565,000. So it's pretty on the level. But yeah, a slight decrease. Overall thoughts on the show?
Meh. Like,
it's not a great SummerSlam. I'll go that far to say.
This also features, and this I recall vividly as a child, this is the first show that features a match that I overhyped in my mind and did not deliver, and I was very upset about. And I watched it again, and it still does not deliver.
Well, we'll definitely go through that, go blow for blow, discuss every detail on this. So, Drowning Pool, they have this, the video package is interesting because essentially it's the music video for Let the Bodies Hit the Floor interspersed with clips of, like, the wrestling taking place and all the different feuds and storylines going on. I thought it was, it's weird, but I thought it was cool. I thought it really worked.
I think it's cool, and I think this is kind of like the unsung secondary rock and wrestling connection, because they were working with MTV a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. After the initial pyro and explosions and our introduction by the commentary team of Jim Ross and Paul Heyman, obviously Paul Heyman very much favouring the Alliance side of things, Jim Ross on the side of WWF, we have the first match, which is Lance Storm defending the Intercontinental Championship against Edge, King of the Ring winner Edge, should we say. So Storm starts by trying to cut one of his "If I Can Be Serious for a Moment" promos before Edge interrupts. And there's a shot of Christian with the King of the Ring trophy and other people in the WWF locker room just trying to big up Edge and trying to show their support for him.
You'll see this a lot throughout the next few months. What do you think about stuff like this?
I think it shows that there was a lot of stakes attached to it, which I think is a good sign. That there were people all backing each other, and it felt like it was important to everyone in the locker room. So I'm happy with the way they approached that.
That's fair. It seemed cheesy to me, and even more so now when you watch it back.
It is a little cheesy, and it's full of all the jobbers essentially, just all the people that couldn't get on TV. So it's a little bit.
Scotty 2 Hotty and Albert,
and Funaki, yeah. It's okay, but I think I like the sense of unity at least that the teams were having. This match it's good. I wouldn't go any further than that, but it's a good match. Lance Storm, it's highly underrated. I think he's an excellent wrestler. Edge at this point was coming into his own as a single star. Definitely had a much bigger crowd reaction for this than he did do when he won the King of the Ring. He feels like a star on the rise now, and he ends up winning this one with the Impaler DDT after all kinds of shenanigans. So after the match has taken place, so Edge has gone out the half Boston Crab, and there's been some springboards and Edge-O-Matic, sit out powerbomb after blocking a drop kick, which I think we saw in the Okada Kota Ibushi match at one point. So it's nice to see that spot just appear out of nowhere in this one. Christian runs down to try and interfere, attempts to spear Storm, but ends up spearing Edge instead. I think it's just quite funny because Christian ends up being a World Tag Team Champion with Storm down the road as well.
Not too long after this either.
Yeah. So Storm kicks Christian in the face and gets a really good near fall on Edge. Edge kicks out right at the last moment. Edge reverses some moves into the Impaler DDT to get the win, wins the Intercontinental Championship. Christian celebrates with him and lets him have his moment. So yeah, it was a good solid opener. Nothing super spectacular, but a well wrestled match.
Is it fair to say that there's nothing super spectacular on anything in the show?
I would say one match is worth going back and watching just for, I think, the intensity of it, but pretty much beyond that, there isn't really too much to shout about.
Yeah.
We cut backstage to Test cutting. Test is a guy who I absolutely don't know for his promo ability, but I thought his promo was really good on this one. Really justified his reason for joining the Alliance, really showed why he wants to show loyalty to them because the WWF showed him no loyalty. He's a guy who's consistently went under the radar in WWE.
I will go on record as saying I'm a huge mark for his time in the WWE. I loved his work. I think his Big Boot was one of the best, in my opinion. That to the point where WWE put out this thing of who do you think ever did the best Big Boot, and it was just a video clips of everybody. And yeah, Test still holds up to this very day, and his elbow drop for being a man of his size, one of the best.
After that, we have a Jericho promo where he calls Lillian Garcia Vivian Garcia. So
Right.
It's amazing that he's doing that because later down the road he would get other people's names mixed up as well with
Tom and Mike.
Tom Phillips and Todd Phillips and Mike Rome and other people along those lines. It's just it's nice that was kind of consistently followed part of his character. And he just talks about his match with Rhino and how Stephanie's a slut and all the stuff that we've gotten used to in this time.
I want somebody to go, or even if it's just Jericho, I'd like somebody to just do that one more time, because what a great, like, it's like, it just fits this era so perfectly.
So then we have, I think that's been quite a consistent trend in 2001. The random 6-man tag in the middle of a pay-per-view. Spike Dudley and the APA facing Test and the Dudley Boys. Again, it's just your typical WWE at the time 6-man tag. There's some fun spots. There's some things that seem to have no logical terms of like storytelling or booking behind it. Just people fighting for the sake of fighting. It's a special trend with like the APA, because the APA were pretty notorious for not selling that much, or when they had to sell, would get up pretty soon afterwards and start beating on their opponents again.
Yeah, I know Bradshaw's run at the top was meh for you, but what did you think about the APA as a team?
I mean, I go back now and watch them, and I don't see. I like their backstage stuff, but I just don't see anything special about them as a team. What's special about them is the fact that they hit hard, but that's more due to the fact that they're both cunts than like because Bradshaw's a well-defined like absolute fuckhead in terms of bullying people in the ring, but Farouk was very similar in that regard as well. He would just like decimate people in the ring for real. He pulled no punches. Let's put it that way. But they're counteracted by the fact that Spike Dudley is the greatest babyface to ragdoll around a ring. Like
he's underrated in that regard.
Oh yeah, perfect babyface in peril especially for tag team matches. There's one point towards the end of the match where Test tosses Spike off the top rope, like through a table on the outside when he attempts the Dudley Dog. Then Bradshaw hits the clothesline from hell, gets a visual pin, but the referee's too busy checking on Spike that's just gone through the table. Shane McMahon comes out, hits Bradshaw with a chair because, of course, we need more interference after the interference in the previous match, and Test gets the pin off the back of that. So, yeah, just a standard 6-man tag. It doesn't really make the Alliance guys look very strong because they had to get interference to help them win it. You know, pretty typical stuff for what the Alliance storyline ended up being. Move on past that one to Edge being congratulated backstage by Hardcore Holly, Al Snow, Matt Hardy, Lita. It's funny that Edge's being congratulated by Matt Hardy and Lita after all the things that turned out between them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy for you guys now. Hey, Lita, are you doing anything after the show? Christian comes in because he's the ultimate buzzkill to tell everybody that it's super great news. He's going to have a match with Matt Hardy for the European Championship on the next episode of Raw, even though they're both on the same side. Because he's more desperate about becoming the champion with Edge than showing his allegiance to the cause. And then he gets on a phone call with their grandma, because this is the point in time where they're still trying to convince us that Edge and Christian are brothers. So Christian gets a call from his grandma, but she only wants to talk to Edge, and so Ed to congratulate him. So Edge takes the call, then he hands it back, and she hangs up before she talks to Christian.
Poor Grandma Edna.
Yeah, Christian, poor Christian, more like creepy little bastard. Then we have this really just pointless segment between Sean Stasiak and Deborah, where Sean just comes in and says he needs to talk to Stone Cold Steve Austin because he thinks that his tights have become bad luck and he wants to get some tips from him. And Deborah just reinforces the fact that he's got a match against Kurt Angle for the title, and that Stasiak should just go out there and try and kick some butt to impress Stone Cold. Just like, just why was this taking up like 2 minutes of my time on this show?
Because Planet Stasiak, you know.
We'd see a lot more of Sean towards the end of it, but
Really?
admittedly, those segments are a lot better than this one was. We see a lot more of him on this show, well, at least two more times.
I mean, why him? And they really didn't ever let him go.
Second generation superstar whose father was one of the first WWF champions.
Fair enough, but they didn't do anything with him.
No, of course not. But that's because he was an idiot. He's me by him. He's me after all. Can't do much with me.
Then we had
a title match: Tajiri against X-Pac, light heavyweight champion against cruiserweight champion. So prior to this, X-Pac had been the double champion when he defeated Billy Kidman for both titles, but then just lost one of them to Tajiri, and now he's having another one a couple of shows later. Tajiri I'm amazed at how popular Tajiri was at this point in time.
He's a fun character.
Oh, he's awesome in the ring at this point in time. He's so athletic, so fast, so his kicks are great, everything about him. And the crowd are really getting behind him, which is why I think it's just so bizarre they had X-Pac win this match. Nobody wanted
He
X-Pac to win this match.
he looked weird, didn't he?
Yeah, he looks really thin and, like, gangly. I mean, I know I'd rather that than him being, like, roided out of his mind, but, you know, it just, he looked like he'd just gotten up a couple of hours before the show started. But,
yeah, and if there's no weird way to say this, but I'm reading it, so I'm just gonna say it on the air. We're talking about X-Pac, but Pac is back and gonna fight Kenny Omega.
wow, that's
Yeah.
Well, we at least get some. See, there's some breaking news on this show. We don't always just revolve around 2001. We sometimes dip back into 2019. It's the issue of working with someone now who has a job actually reporting wrestling news. He sometimes has his other priorities. Come on, Rob, we're in 2001 right now.
I do apologize.
Puck has even started wrestling yet, for God's sake.
Well, no, I'm sure he's doing some backyard stuff. How old is he at that point?
Probably in his, like, late teens, I'd imagine.
He's totally doing backyard stuff.
Oh, yeah, I imagine so. But X-Pac's X-Pac at this point isn't even 30. Still have to keep reminding yourself of that, even though he looked about 45 coming into this match. But he didn't wrestle like a 45-year-old, because this is one of the first times I've ever seen X-Pac do a springboard plancher over the top rope. Just do a huge dive over the top on Tajiri. This felt like a real cruiserweight match between two guys that knew what they were doing. I thought this was one of the better matches on the entire show.
I'm gonna tell you right now, I know we crack on X-Pac a lot, but the dude knew what he was doing, and I think if he would have just gotten away from the suck it stuff, he would have been a big star.
Yeah, I always like to think that if he'd have just evolved his character a little more at this point in time, he definitely could have extended his lifespan in front of the audience a bit more. But it just like infuriates me with how overdue was that they thought, yeah, but wouldn't it be better if we just give like this guy some more heat? You know, like this guy who nobody cares about. Let's make him both the light heavyweight and cruiserweight champion, rather than the guy that everyone is really, really excited for at the moment. Just makes no sense to me. We had, and again, for the third match in a row, interference getting involved in the end of this match.
Well, Callum, we're at war here, Callum. You gotta interfere in everything you can.
But these two are on the same side.
Okay.
Actually, that's one of the things that I wanted to mention about that, which I thought was a nice little attention to detail. In that the WWF superstars and the WCW or ECW superstars were entering from different sides of the staging.
When did they? Because at some point they stopped doing that.
Probably around about like the next show, probably because they just no one cares. Yeah. But yeah, so Albert comes out, he gets misted by Tajiri when he tries to interfere, but this gives X-Pac an opportunity to hit a low blow, hit the X Factor, and get the win. A really good match, but just absolutely baffling by the decision being made in it. You have Perry Saturn in the world calling for fans to help him find Moppy, who'd been stolen.
Yeah,
has her posted on milk cartons, talks about her being like, you can spot her hair from a mile away and she's long and slender. It's like, God, this guy had the worst gimmick.
Have you ever felt that way about a mop?
I can't say I have. I mean, I might have given my vacuum cleaner the eye a couple of times, but you know, it's like, that has a bit more body to it.
This is true.
And imagine the suction.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's got a pretty good suction feature. I don't know if you get that from a mop. So maybe Saturn should have been looking at other appliances.
Well, at least the mop would help you clean up afterwards.
This is benefits.
We move on to Chris Jericho versus Rhino. So this is pretty much like Rhino is the body replacement for Stephanie McMahon in this feud. They build up.
Not as big on the breast with Rhino.
No, he actually looks pretty slim in this. I think nowadays Rhino might be giving Stephanie a run for his money, but the Rhino at this point is actually pretty slender and can do a lot of athletic stuff in the ring. I think at one point during this he does this really fast airplane spin. It's just like I just love seeing old school stuff like that just being done in a new modern way. Like Tyler Bate does that now.
I wish he would have been given a rough shot. I really liked Rhino.
Yeah. There's one point where Jericho dives out to the ring to Rhino from the top rope, and he catches him in a gore on the outside, and that just gets the first holy shit chant of the night. I think maybe the only holy shit chant of the night, which is amazing considered like nowadays, where you basically get that every other match in WWE, or this is awesome or something along those lines. We had some like interesting stuff. There are a few bits of like where I think there were some odd communication or odd decisions where. At one point, Jericho goes for a lion saw and just lands on his feet, and then just immediately elbows Rhino in the face, and then hits the lion saw. Which I think, okay, so you just extended that for no reason whatsoever. Finish happens close towards the end where Jericho kisses Stephanie. That's the school bully thing, isn't it? Like they say all the mean things about you, but they really like you instead.
Yeah, I think they missed a boat by not putting them as a couple, because I think. The underlying thing was always like, there's something there.
Yeah, but Triple H wouldn't have liked that.
Yeah. How do you think he felt, by the way? His wife was being quite the little slut on these pay-per-views, offering favors to anyone that would beat Jericho. Like, how do you think that made Triple H feel as a man?
I think it's hard to really say. I think he was at that point more concentrating on his leg.
That's true.
Then we had essentially Rhino at one point applies the walls of Jericho, but he misses a gore. Jericho applies the walls of Jericho, does the lion tamer aspect for good measure, and gets the tap out. I think this match may have gone like a little bit too long, but it was overall well wrestled. Just nothing really spectacular. Like it seems to be the trend for SummerSlam. It's good, but not quite special. We have a backstage segment with The Rock and William Regal. The Rock arrives after, like, William Regal's concerned about him because he went through an announce table by Booker T on SmackDown. But he comes back to let him know that he feels that he's about to become the WWE champion, that people know it. And then there's this, it's just brilliant that they separate quickly and Stasiak comes in, runs, hits the garage door behind them, and then they go back to talking as if nothing happened. And they're both so good at that because The Rock's obviously effortlessly charismatic and a great actor, but William Regal is just right up there with him in terms of just being a perfect straight man comedy actor.
Did he ever get into the acting gig? Because he would have been great.
No, he always he always wanted to just bring that side of things into wrestling, which he adds a lot of he was always a big fan of the, I don't want to say slapstick, but the comedy like a Mr. Bean type character. In British comedy, and he always tried to employ that side of things into his own wrestling, and I think he did it perfectly.
Yeah, really sure. And he's one of my favorites, and I think he's one of the true jack of all trades.
Then we have a ladder match for the Hardcore Championship. Jeff Hardy defending against Rob Van Dam.
This is the match I was referring to.
Yeah, this match is in some elements really wild and innovative, and in other aspects, completely out of control and unstructured. These are two guys who don't know how to wrestle to a script. Or don't really care about a story, they just want to go out there and look cool. At least at this point in their careers. So a lot of the stuff they do is really cool. Like, there's a lot of slingshots with the ladders, there's a lot of dives to the outside, there's a superplex off the top of the ladder, there's a sunset flip powerbomb, the crowd is going crazy for some of these spots. Like a diving kick by OED to knock people off the ladder, a rolling thunder onto Jeff Hardy laying out on a ladder. There's some great spots and some great, there's clearly they're taking a lot of damage to deliver as good a match as possible. But it's so just from one spot to the other. It's just you do a move, I do a move, you do a move, I do a move. There's no bite to it. It just doesn't have that flow or that story that you'd expect from at least from a one-on-one ladder match. This is the kind of thing that you'd think, oh yeah, that's cool for a multi-man tag team match. Where there's tons of people going flying at any point in time and everyone's trying to get their shit in and stuff like that. But when it's one-on-one, you need to have a bit more of a character to it. And this just felt like two guys doing moves in their backyard.
Yeah, and I think in retrospect, this is the beginning of that era. Oh, we're just gonna do crazy spots, and this is what people came to see. And I always thought that this would be one of the, greatest ladder matches of all time. It's freaking Rob Van Dam and Jeff Hardy. If this was booked on an indie show today, like, I would still expect it to be pretty good. And it just never delivered. But on the flip side, this probably really put RVD over with Vince McMahon. And if you look through the history of the Alliance, RVD is one of the few guys that actually gets over.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I don't know if anybody listening would be surprised to hear that they managed to botch the finish. It's amazing. No. RVD and Jeff Hardy fighting each other, botch the finish. Crazy. But what happened was there was this point where RVD sends Jeff Hardy swinging from the title like he did for the spear at WrestleMania. But instead of climbing to the top of a ladder and doing a spear, RVD climbs to the top rope and tries to do a diving, spinning back heel kick. And he completely misses Jeff Hardy. Gets nowhere near the height that he needs to in any way connect with Jeff Hardy. And so he misses. Jeff Hardy just falls down. RVD pushes Jeff Hardy off a ladder to make up for the missed spot. Then climbs the ladder himself, just takes the title down, and that's it. Very, very rushed, uncoordinated finish.
This just about held up the way it did when I was a child.
Backstage, we go to see Shane McMahon gives a big gift to Booker T before his big match. It's a bookend made out of the announce table he put the Rock through on SmackDown.
What move did he use, Cal?
He used the rock bottom, if according to JR. But no. According to Paul Heyman, it's the bookend, obviously.
It's a bookend made with the bookend, yeah.
Yeah, a bookend as a result of a bookend. And which is funny because basically the whole storyline that The Rock had been building up is the fact that Booker T can't read. So the fact that he's got bookends at the end of that as well is... So, yeah, just a little pep talk before their match. And now we move on to always the most fun part of these reviews. It's the Undertaker match. Brothers of Destruction against DDP and Kanyon in a steel cage for both sets of the Tag Team Championships. You go ahead first.
Undertaker in 2000. Is this his worst year? I think this is his worst year.
I legitimately hate the Undertaker at this point. I'm feeling if I was in 2001, I'd be feeling the same way about the Undertaker as I feel now about Baron Corbin. That's how bad I really despise the Undertaker at this. Like going back and it's really sullying his legacy for me. It's just
so bad.
How I can best describe this match is a giant masturbation exercise by both the Undertaker and Vince McMahon. I can imagine Vince McMahon jacking off during the entirety of the match about how much better WWF is to WCW. And this is just an opportunity for... So Kanyon, United States champion at the time, let's forget, and DDP, one of WCW's biggest top stars from the late 90s onwards, just get absolutely decimated for beaten from pillar to post throughout the steel cage repeatedly by Kane and The Undertaker. Mostly The Undertaker, but Kane gets his few shots in as well. I mean, it's appalling. It's absolutely appalling. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Structurally, it's awful. If there any attempt to try and build up the WCW guys, completely miss the mark. Yeah, it's just an opportunity to show who the real big dog in the yard is.
I would like to point out that Diamond Dallas Page was one of the best homegrown talents in WCW history, maybe right underneath Goldberg, and they did this.
Well, of course they did.
But this is why they would struggle for a while, Callum, because they don't want to fucking build any star that they didn't create.
Yeah. You know what I hate about The Undertaker? There's many things at this point in time in his career. When he's coming out to do his entrance and he does those arm shakes, wow, you think you're so hard. Like, you think you're so important, that you're so special, that you have to do the arm things because you're about to go in there and kick some ass, and this is all real to you. Just like, he's such a dick in this point in his career. I just watch him. I managed to put myself in the mindset of pretending I'm watching this in 2001. I'm just watching this, think, oh, fuck off and retire already.
Yeah. what's scary to me about that is we're saying all these things about him, and this is supposed to be a character transformation to allow him to be more of himself. And it makes me wonder if The Undertaker is like that in real life.
Yeah, it is a little concerning. So essentially the story of the match is Kane and Undertaker beat them from pillar to post. Kanyon climbs out and they let Kanyon go so they can concentrate on DDP. Kanyon leaves his friend high and dry because you can't have friends in the alliance, obviously.
Well, he's just being a good friend, you know. He realizes that stalking and being a creeper is wrong, and he's leaving the cage to allow his friend to suffer the consequences of his actions.
This is the same Kanyon who did a stalker angle with Buff Bagwell's mother in WCW.
Well, you see, forklift instead of poles. There's no redeeming qualities here.
No. So DDP just gets a beating from both Brothers of Destruction, mainly the Undertaker, because he has to show his dominance over them. Beats him with steel chain, throws him into the cage, picks him up from pinfall attempts, and then Undertaker does the classic, okay, you've had enough of your beating, stay away from my family, and is going to let him escape until Kane convinces him otherwise. He chokeslams DDP off the top rope, and then hits the last ride and pins him to win both sets of tag titles. A complete waste of time.
I prefer the term masturbation exercise. I think that nails it.
Yeah, this is a pure self-gratification for The Undertaker. I'm sure Robbie would be surprised to hear that the very next night on Raw is when Sarah defeats DDP one-on-one in a...
No!
You're not aware of that?
You don't say. I mean,
oh yeah, yeah,
by God, Diamond Dallas Page. You would think he was WCW World Champion at one point.
Oh no, it's amazing. I think that was Sarah's one and only match in WWE, just pinning DDP clean with the Undertaker style pinfall.
Well, listen, I want you to know that Diamond Dallas Page would rechannel this energy, and he would want you to know that that's not a bad thing. It's a good thing.
Do you know what's also a good thing, Rob? Donating to the Patreon. No, donating to the Patreon.
I like
interrupt my plug. Yeah, try and interrupt. Yeah, so I haven't thrown out too many plugs here. So just before we get towards the end, final two matches, if you'd like to throw a few spare bucks in our way, maybe we could do some more retro reviews and other podcasts outside of the regular show previews and predictions and post shows. If you throw a few money towards the Smark Out Moment Patreon, it could be as little as much as you want. Just helps us keep the lights on around here, helps support Tony and me and Rob in our endeavours here, helps us to do a few more fun things. And you can also support us monetarily by buying a t-shirt or some other merchandise on the Redbubble or TeePublic shops. It's awesome, loads of great stuff on there. Maybe we should try and petition Tony to get a 2001 shirt made.
Yeah, I think we definitely need a 2001 Wrestling Odyssey t-shirt.
Yeah.
And I'll throw this out there. I want to do 2002 Wrestling Odyssey because I think 2002, there's so much meat on the bone. And there's so much fun to talk about there. So donate to the Patreon so we can continue this journey back in time.
Okay, so just a few little plugs out of the way. So we move on to another backstage segment where The Rock's talking to a trainer and Stasiak attempts it again, dives over the trainer table, and then The Rock and the trainer pretend that nothing's happened again. These segments are harmless fun. I know it just makes Stasiak a joke, but if that's how you're going to use him, then you might as well make it funny. And these segments were. And then you had both locker rooms gathering together, ready to watch the WWF title match, which is Steve Austin defending against Kurt Angle. I really like this match.
Yeah, they have a great rivalry, and they have great matches. My only issue with all of these matches in retrospect is I hate Stone Cold Steve Austin as a heel, and not in the way that I'm supposed to hate heels, but it doesn't work for me.
If it has to be these two, then this is the kind of match I want to see them doing. It was intense, vicious. These two play off the fact that it feels like they legitimately hate each other. They play off each other so well. There's a lot of attacking the legs from both sides. There's tons of suplexes. Austin using a superplex. He uses quite a lot of suplexes in 2001 for a guy with a pretty damaged neck.
Yeah, because I think this whole run for him was his desire to get back to being the working heel.
And the big story throughout the entire duration of this match is that Austin can't keep Angle down. So he hits a stunner early, but Angle kicks out of that. And then he stuns Angle again, but Angle falls to the outside. And then he throws him against the steel post, throws him against the barricade, against the announce table, just beats him all over the place. Angle's busted wide open. They do this great spot where Austin's coming back over the barricade after throwing Angle to the outside and throwing him back in. Angle grabs him on the barricade and locks in the ankle lock and just pulls him around. You see like some really great, like just brawling on the outside. Angle does a belly to belly on the outside to Austin and a back suplex on the outside, and that's just a back suplex is one of those moves which is far too dangerous for the amount of reaction that it gets. Because that a lot of things could go wrong with that move, and it gets zero reaction from the crowd most of the time.
I was gonna say I really like, as you said, the intensity in this match is here. I think this is how you make a star, and this is Kurt Angle's probably his first real foray into the wrestling machine.
Yeah, he does feel a lot like that in this match. There's a lot of he does at one point the Bret Hart pin spot from to try and escape the $1 Million Dream. So you're throwing a few little bits there because obviously Austin was the one that fell to Bret Hart anyway. So the guy who's learned from those mistakes over the years. You have another stunner by Austin, but Angle kicks out again, and the pops are getting like a lot bigger for these kickouts. Angle does an angle slam, but gets a 2 count because he couldn't capitalize on the pin quickly enough. And then once he's doing the ankle locks and all the other stuff, Austin realizes he can't beat this guy. This is Angle's night. So he punches El Hebner. And
what a dick heel, boo.
Yeah. So yeah, he does that. Then he later low blows Kurt Angle, but Mike Chioda comes out, and so he stuns Mike Chioda. Then he hits Tim White with the title when they come out. So there's just like it's an endless stream of WWF referees coming out to try and do the pinfalls and stuff like that. And then finally Angle hits the angle slam, has the clear pinfall on Austin, but it's Nick Patrick who's come out to do the final thing, and he disqualifies Austin for beating up referees. A very, very flat and drab end to what was a great match leading up to that. But I'm kind of okay with it in the sense that they had a longer term plan for Angle on the next show. So at least they had a plan for what they were going to do next. And the reason for doing it. It clearly ends this one very flat. Angle beats up Tim White afterwards, puts him in the ankle lock to at least give the crowd some kind of pop. But yeah, it was a very good match with not the best finish.
Yeah, and they would go on to have better matches.
I don't know I know we're obviously going to see the next one at Unforgiven as well, their big title match there. But it'll be interesting to see if that is better than this match, because I still think in the core components of this match was really, really well done. It'd just be interesting to see if the Unforgiven match like lives up to those to these standards. But and I really liked post match. JR really gets in Heyman's face about this, about saying how Austin can't beat Angle, and like Angle has Austin's number and stuff along those lines, and Heyman's just standing there taking it from JR. They had really good chemistry.
Really good chemistry, and really good for this angle in particular. Like,
yes.
Heyman is just the snarky little, Austin's still the champion, and JR being the betrayed friend and loyalist to the WWF, just like, I love it. I love JR. He tried his hardest to get over Austin as a heel, but it did not work.
You know what I like the most about their pairing. I know it's something that compare it to how things are now today and all that stuff, but they don't feel scripted at all. They don't feel like they're working towards. Obviously, they're telling the story, but they're telling it in a way that it feels organic.
Right.
And I really appreciate that about both them at this point in time in their careers. People talk about obviously JR now maybe not be up to scratch, and Heyman obviously doesn't do commentary anymore, but at this point in time, they were both on their A game.
I still think JR is one of the best in the game, And it's calls like this as to why I'll think that for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. Now we move on to the final match, the actual main event, which was The Rock facing Booker T for the World Heavyweight Championship. I think even though the WWF Championship is the more prestigious one, it makes sense to have The Rock as the headliner. I mean, he is the big draw for this show. So I think it makes sense. And it gives Booker T a better platform as well.
The most surprising thing about this match is that only a few months ago, Rock took to Instagram in 2019 to say this is one of his favorite WWF programs of all time. And I don't feel that way. I don't know. I just never had that level of intensity to me.
No, I completely get where you're coming from in that regards. I think that the match is not bad by any stretch of the imagination. I think it's pretty good, but I don't think it lived up to the other title match that took place. It definitely didn't really live up to main event billing for a SummerSlam show. It has its moments. There's I think Booker T gets a lot of offense in this, probably more than you'd be expecting, considering how people consider the alliance against WWF storyline that goes on. I think this is the one and only time I've ever seen The Rock perform a La Magistral Cradle in a
yeah, he
in a
has
match.
these weird moments of like, I'm a wrestler. I'm gonna do a wrestle.
At one point, The Rock hits a deliberate punch to the dick of Booker T, and JR acts like Kevin Kelly during a Yano match and says, "Oh, was that a low blow? I think my monitor might have gone out or something." So just I like the Kevin Kelly spot when he does that, so I found that funny as well. Shane cause constant distractions on the outside for The Rock, just letting Booker T to get an advantage. Lets him just get a few kicks and shots into it. Booker goes for a steel chair that Shane introduced, but that allows Shane to hit The Rock with the title. So the APA come out to even the odds and get a bit of revenge on Shane for the 6-man tag earlier. Farouk chases him around the ring and he runs straight into a clothesline from hell on the outside, that was a brutal clothesline.
That's good continuity. I can appreciate that.
Yeah, I can appreciate that they paid that off towards the end and that played a part in it. Booker hits the bookend, which JR continues to refer to as him doing the rock bottom. Gets a kick out. Rock then hits the people's elbow, but Shane pulls out the referee when he has the pin. So Rock decides to hit a rock bottom to Shane on the floor. So Shane is getting a lot of abuse on the outside. Shane taking that sort of like risky abuse on his body. That sounds so unlike him.
Yeah. Why ever would Shane McMahon do that?
So the finish is Booker T hits a scissor kick, goes for the spinneroonie, does that, and as he's celebrating the fact that he's done the spinneroonie, The Rock is nipped up in the background, catches Booker in the rock bottom and gets the pin and becomes the WCW champion. So
the payoff to this is that, boy, Booker T is stupid.
Yeah, that is.
That
was the Rock storyline all along, and Booker T just proves that he is stupid.
But I'll give them credit for actually paying that off of, wow, you're stupid. You got him beat and you're going to do this freaking breakdancing move?
I have to say, I love that nip up. Because it's just like, he's been taken out by the scissor kick, he's in the corner, and then Booker T just takes his eye off the ball for a couple of seconds, and The Rock is straight on his feet. I know that's like, it kind of, in some ways it can bury the scissor kick as a move, but in other ways it's just such a cool visual. It makes me brings back memories to, I think, the first Rock versus Cena match, where Cena takes his eye off the ball, loses concentration, decides to do a people's elbow for himself, and when he bounces off the ropes, he nips up, hits the rock bottom, and wins the match. And I think that's one of the best finishes to a Rock match I've seen.
I think it's pretty good. I think Rock does maybe the second best nip up, only because Shawn Michaels is always going to be number one.
Well, it's because Shawn always does a dive. He does the dive, and he always when he does the flying forearm, he always just rolls out, and he's pretty much dead on his back. And then he does it, and it's like a revival for him.
They did do a double nip up spot. Rock likes nipping up at SummerSlam apparently, because he does it again next year. And I think those are the only couple times I can really recall. Hey, look, Rock nipped up, and it's a cool, like, I'm an action movie star thing. I like it. Good moves on The Rock. But again, I think we're really entering the final days of his career. We don't even know it yet.
No, there's just like a few years left before he's full-time Hollywood star. So had to make the most of him as we can, and he's with us for the rest of the 2001 journey. So that's a good thing. And well, we've reached the conclusion for the this part of our 2001 journey. So SummerSlam 2001, a decent show.
A solid 6, out of 10.
Yeah, 6, 7 out of 10, maybe a 6.5 if you're being generous. It's stuck, unfortunately, in between two of the best SummerSlams of all time, so it will never get that same level of recognition, and it doesn't really merit that level of recognition anyway. But it's too easy for it to get crowded out by the two shows the show that preceded it and the show that followed it. So yeah, that's it for us for August. So on the September edition, 2 reviews for you, 2 big show event reviews alongside all of the reheated tags and news from September of 2001. Obviously, we'll be looking at the pay-per-view Unforgiven from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I wonder who's. I mean, there's somebody in particular who's from that area. I can't really remember, but
yeah, but Britt Baker's not wrestling yet.
Oh yeah, of course. But we're also going to, because this is also the final month which we're in a pre-9/11 world.
That's so scary.
Yeah, September the 11th takes place just a couple of weeks after SummerSlam takes place. And arguably one of the most earth-shattering events that has ever taken place in human history. We'll probably go through some sort of like little retrospective of that. Obviously, not going to break down that in detail, but WWE holds a special place in that regards of having what they consider one of the first big live, like, mass events that took place in the wake of that on the Thursday edition of SmackDown, where they did a live show in like remembrance of everyone that lost their lives in that event. But yeah, so we'll cover that as well. So you get 2 reviews there, as well as all the other news and events that took place. So thank you very much for joining us on this next stage of our journey. A few final plugs to throw out there before we send you on your merry way. You should obviously be subscribing to the YouTube channel if you haven't already, ringing the little bell for notifications to let you know when 2001 and any other Smack Talk podcast is coming out. Next week you can look forward to some hot tags and the predictions for All Out.
Everything.
For All Out and NXT UK, as well as the post shows for those ones. Very breaking news, which I assume will be covered very much both either in the All Out predictions or in the hot tags of Moxley no longer being involved in All Out, it seems.
This is literally breaking as we're recording it, to the point where it caught me off guard. Yes, Jon Moxley's out with a MRSA infection in his elbow, and Pac will be replacing him next Saturday night against Kenny Omega, so learn more about that on the preview show for All Out, coming to you next week on this very channel.
Yep, so again, make sure you are subscribed or you're following us in the podcast feeds if you're listening to us through those mediums. Other stuff you should be doing is checking out the website, smarkoutmoment.com, all the weekly articles, all the other features and events taking place on there. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, join the Mega Maniacs, get the discussion rolling in there. Want to throw out a few bits of your plugs, Rob?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DudeFelice. You can check out A Wrestling News. You can check out Fightful, which is going to have all the latest breaking news on everything going on with Jon Moxley, and boots on the ground at StarCast. So, stay tuned to Fightful for all that stuff. And finally, you should check out all the weeklies at smarkoutmoment.com.
Yep, so again, if you want to support us monetarily and see more shows like this, then donate to the Patreon or send a bit of money our way through Redbubble or TeePublic. You can follow me on Twitter at Wigmeister14. Again, check out Power Rankings and other weekly articles on smarkoutmoment.com. And yeah, that will do us in for another edition of 2001 A Wrestling Odyssey. So I thank you very much for joining us on this trip back in time, and we'll see you next month. But for now, this has been another Smark Out Moment, and we are being counted out.